The views, information, and opinions expressed during the following program are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent the views of Access Communications, its representatives, or its employees.
I'd like to welcome everybody on Remembrance Day. We're starting off the tour here. This is the Veterans Gallery for whoever served and who is retired and Allied or Canadian. It doesn't matter as long as you're from around Weyburn and that you can put your picture up on the wall. We have lots of room for more pictures, so if anybody has got pictures of their family members, brothers, whatever, just come down to the Legion and we'll get you fixed up to get the picture up on the wall. Now we're at the thank you wall for these veterans that have pictures up here. Some from Weyburn, some are not. You will notice on the picture one with Kempton on it, and he was a long-time member of Weyburn business. On the bottom you'll see there's bombers, there's fighters, and there's infantry, and these are our thank you all. This is we call this our little Legion cenotaph. I set this up every year, different every year, so as the people can see our different sorts of wreaths, crosses, and I've got some stuff from my hometown in Northern Ireland that I was presented when I was over. This is our medal presentation case. We still have a lot more medals to go in it, but these pictures that are up above it, the lakes up north are all named for the veterans, and that's all these veterans here have all got a lake named after them. This is our honour roll here for the people of Weyburn who served. This gentleman here is Colonel Merritt, and he won the VC for bravery. Some ships, bayonet that was donated, plaques from the South Saskatchewan Regiment, and some different sections of the army on display. Now we come to our display cases. On this side here we've got some Legion memorabilia that have been given to us by Weyburn people, and they've donated quite a lot actually. On this one here we've got uniforms, and we've got a uniform and a write-up for Mr. Vilku. He was Daniel Vilku, and he was graciously donated all his uniform. We do sponsor a few teams, the Legion Royals for hockey and the Bantam baseball. On the bottom here you see Ladies Auxiliary original cups, saucers and plates. It's the full set from 1939. This is a nursing uniform from 1942, and this was the lady that owned it, and this is all her stuff. Canadian Ordnance Corps pillow, and a couple of donations here, an old Union Jack, and an aircraft spotting book from 1945. It's got any plane that anybody flew is in this book. Now we have a Navy uniform. You might recognize the name, Frank Dufour. This uniform, this gentleman started in the Cadet Corps in Weyburn at 12 years of age, and he rose through the, he liked the military so much that he joined, and his rank when he retired was Major General. Unfortunately, we don't have a Cadet Corps at the minute in the Legion, but if there's enough interest, we will start it up again. This uniform was donated by May Wright. She was in the Women's Auxiliary Air Force, and this is an officer's uniform of the Royal Canadian Air Force, donated by Dick Talon. And some of these are books and different things we have just for people to read. This uniform is another ladies' uniform of what they wore in the armed forces. This one is Major Ken Williams' uniform. He kindly donated it to the Legion. We have some stuff here. We'll go. Everybody thinks this is just a picture of First World War soldiers, but it is a postcard, and it was sent to a lady. Lady sent it in Weyburn. Now I've got plaques and different uniform stuff that was donated to us. This thing in particular, this is a dead man's penny, and from the First World War, and any relatives left behind of a soldier, sailor, airman that was killed, they got one of these presented to them in their homes. But a lot of people put it on the headstones, and unfortunately there's not many left because it's made of bronze, and bronze is valuable, so the thieves come along and pried them off the gravestones, which is very sad. This gentleman was a long-time member of the Legion, Don Goranson. He was a bomb aimer in, I think it was a Lancaster bomber. And this is all his uniform and his greatcoat that he wore. This flag is from Her Majesty's ship Weyburn. It was sank just off Gibraltar by a U-boat 9, and there was 7 sailors killed. The rest were rescued. This is the ship itself, and this is where it lies under the ocean. This clock, a few years ago, a gentleman phoned me from St. Catharines, Ontario, and he said he'd like to come down and present the ship's clock. His brother was on the ship, and he managed to grab the clock. And so he come down, and we had a nice little ceremony, and now we've got the clock. So we've got the flag and the clock. This flag behind me is the red ensign, and why we have it it was taken, it's the last flag that flew on the Parliament buildings. And we MLA, I think it was, Watson from Yellowgrass was walking past as a soldier was taking it down, and he asked him what he was going to do with it. And the soldier didn't know, so the soldier said, "Do you want it?" And so Mr. Watson took it, and this has been up since 1965, when they put the new flag up, the Canadian maple leaf. Ottawa wants it back, but it's a Legion possession. This is a little bit of stuff that I collected during my period in the army. I bring in the kids, the scouts come to look at this. This is all hands-on. We go around the Legion as we're doing today, and they come back up here, and it's all hands-on. They can hold the bayonets, they can hold the hand grenades, they can lift the rifles and just have a good time and learn about what the soldiers and the veterans wore and had to endure, because a lot of this stuff is very heavy. And so in concluding, I'd like to see some of the schools bring down a class just to have a look at the Legion stuff and come along the table and wear some of lift some of the uniforms and see what the veterans wore. So for next year, if you want to book an appointment, just phone the Legion, and the teachers and the class can come down and learn a little bit more about the veterans and the Remembrance Day history.
Flanders fields, poppies blow, between the crosses row on row that mark our place. And in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved. And now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands, we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die.
Good day. I'm joined today by Claire Kewen. Claire, on behalf of the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 47, we're pleased and honored to welcome you as this year's War Mother recipient.
Well, thanks very much, Jerry. I'm certainly not a war mother. A little of my background, I grew up in Ottawa, and the war started when I was 5 years old. So obviously, I'm not a mother. I'm not even as old as the veterans were. But I did have a lot of war experiences, and I thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my memories.
Well, Claire, not only did you have a few war experiences, but certainly your entire family has taken part in the role of serving and protecting, both through the military as well as through the RCMP. And of course, it's of great note that this is the 150th anniversary of the RCMP.
Yes.
So, Claire, if you would like, let's just start a little bit about, you said as a small girl, 5 years old.
Okay. Well, since Jerry mentioned, my father served in the war, and he was home. I was 6 when he left. I was 11 going on 12 when he came home, and we were all so excited because we were a family again. And but 4 months later, he was discharged A1 in June, and 4 months later, October 26, he died of a massive heart attack. And so the military decided you cannot develop a heart condition in 4 months. So my mother was awarded the Memorial Cross, as well as his mother. And they said that he died in the service of his country, and that's why they got those medals. And so because he died in the service of the country, his name is in the memorial book in the Peace Tower. If you've been in the Peace Tower, they have books from any war that Canada served in. And my father's name is in World War II. And so he, these are the pages. Every day at 11 o'clock in the Peace Tower, unfortunately not now because they're renovating the center block, but it's in another place, and every day at 11 o'clock they have a ceremony, and the ceremony is turning the page, and my father's name appears on page 595, and the page is open on December 11th, and I've had the privilege of seeing it once. And then I had two brothers that served, and both of them were wounded. I'll tell you a little bit of that later because now I'm telling you just about my family. So my father, two brothers, a brother-in-law, several uncles, and of course all the boys in the neighborhood. But we have to remember the boys in the neighborhood then were family. There was no TV and certainly no phones, so in the evening the recreation was always sitting on your front veranda going back visiting one to the other to the other. And then I also have a sister-in-law who served in England, and my oldest brother, they were married in London, and so we had a war bride in the family as well. And then my husband served in the RCMP for 26 and some years. My son Richard, who will also be at the ceremony, he's just celebrated his 25th year. And then my son Eugene is a graduate of Royal Military College and spent 11 years in the Navy. He was deployed to Iraq, but the Iraq War lasted, I think, about 6 days. And so, but they were ready to leave on the Monday on, and the war, or whatever, it only lasted 6 days. So he was sorry that if he had been in Iraq, he would have been a veteran. And so he has 11 years military service. And then my grandson, Gabriel Sylvain, he's also a graduate of Royal Military College, and he is now working in intelligence in Ottawa. So yes, I guess we do have quite a bit. I didn't think of that until you asked me. And so Yeah, so we'll go back to 5 years old. My first memory is standing on Parliament Hill and everybody singing, there's a dark cloud shining, turn the dark clouds inside out till the boys come home. And tears streaming down my face. I didn't know what war was, but I knew it wasn't good. And I knew that my family was away. And then during the war, I remember my mother with her ear cupped to the radio and shaking her head. And again, I knew that it wasn't good. And the first years in the war were not good for the Allies. And then my mother, in those days, news was delivered by telegram. And the telegraph boy would go around on his bicycle delivering telegrams. And nobody wanted one of those telegrams because it was generally bad news. And my mother received two. The first was for my oldest brother, Vincent. And the telegrams always started, regret to inform you, son wounded in action, not expected to live. So, you know, all the neighbors came and there were lots of tears. And then my second brother, Linus, regret to inform you, son wounded in action, extent of injuries unknown. And but anyway, my oldest brother, Vin, the shrapnel pierced his back and pierced his lung to his chest. And in those days, they talked about the death gurgle. He said he could feel the death gurgle. But anyway, the padre came, turned him over, and put a cigarette in his mouth. And there was a little article in the newspaper. They claimed that that cigarette saved his life. Maybe the only person in the world that a cigarette saved their life.
Certainly be the only claim in that regard.
But my grandson Gabriel just told me on this last that it was because they turned him over, and whatever that does to you. And then my brother Linus, he was wounded above the eye and below the eye, and but he wanted to be a fireman. And to be a fireman, you had to have perfect eyesight. And in those days, they didn't have the machines. There was just the chart. So for a week before, he studied the chart and he memorized it. And he passed the eye test. You know, there were so much simpler times for so many things. Yeah. And anyway, he had a good, ended up a captain in the Ottawa Fire Department. And so then, I guess I can jump to the boys came home. And it amazes me now how in all the songs and all the talk, they are always referred to as the boys. And the boys come home.
Well, of course, at that day and age, you know, there was a lot of female personnel serving as well, but the light was mainly shined on the men.
And the women pretty well stayed in Canada, I think, or maybe London, but not active service.
Certainly my mother did, Claire.
Oh, yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah.
And so I guess I skipped over, it was right after the Depression, the war came.
Right.
And there was nothing in the Depression. No one had a nickel. No one had anything. And so all of a sudden, the news was out. You go and sign up and you get a check at the end of the month. So everybody ran like mad, and we didn't have all the passports, and now your name has to be so perfect and identical to what's on your passport and legal documents. So my brother Linus, the one that I told you was wounded in the eye, he ran down and served. And my goodness, he came home in his furlough, which was the last leave before you went overseas, 16. So my mother sent in his birth certificate, and he spent 3 years in Victoria. You didn't go over until you were 19.
Right.
And still, nowadays it's young, but anyway, yeah. So then he went overseas later when he was 19. And then maybe I can jump to when the boys came home. Well, first of all,
Well, Claire, if I could just take one moment, because I noticed one other thing that you have on the table with you that you brought along as well, and it was prior to anybody coming home, but
oh yeah,
a very beautiful Christmas card that you received.
my father was in the Royal Canadian Engineers, and I'm sure we have lots of other mementos, but you know, as time goes on, they get lost. I remember I had received 2 little holy cards for spelling or something, and I sent them to him. And he sent them back to me, "Return to you, darling, from Daddy." And I've lost those. And I think we've lost many things, but we all know how that happens. But this was a Christmas card. It doesn't give the year on it, but it's to my wife, dear Agatha, from her Eugene. And to my dear children's, my father was educated in French, so his wording is a little different. To my dear children's, with the best love and best of words of good luck for something else, and for all your future, a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year from your daddy. So, yeah. And then
Terrific piece of memorabilia.
Oh, yeah.
Very
But
much cherished by your family.
often wonder, should this be in the War Museum or on display somewhere for people to see?
Well, I think there will be an open invitation, Claire, to display it here at the local branch of
Okay.
the Legion,
Yeah.
if you so choose to do so.
So-
And we'd be
Yeah.
truly honored to display
Well,
that here.
it should be where everyone can see these things. And oh yeah, and I should talk. One of the big things was when parcels were sent overseas. They had to be a certain weight, could not be over a certain weight, so I would have to run 2 doors down to our neighbors and borrow their scale, and then you put only very precious things in them. And the big one was at Christmas, and there was lots of excitement when and you of course had a deadline when the parcels had to be sent. And one time there was a little bit of space, and my mother didn't know how to fill it, so she stuffed it with onions. And when my dad opened the parcel, someone yelled, "Onions!" And I guess everybody grabbed. And when it was over, there was none left for him. And one guy said, "Well, they were sent to him. We should at least leave him one." Yeah. And we also had, gee, I'm getting more memories all the time. We also had ration books. And in the ration book, I remember coupons for butter, sugar, tea, coffee. And because my sister and I were, under the age of 12, my mother would exchange I don't know what age you got coupons for tea and coffee, but anyway, we weren't drinking tea and coffee, and Mother could exchange those for sugar and butter. And then in those days, everybody had boarders. That was the only way you could make enough money to survive. And Mother gave the boarders the choice, sugar in your tea or baking. And of course, they all chose baking. So the irony was, after the war, the only ones that put sugar in their tea and coffee were the veterans. Somehow or other, but lots of other things they didn't have, that's for sure. And then I remember, I think it was called VE Day.
Yes.
Yeah. And everybody poured into the streets, and we had pie pans and spoons, and we made all the noise we could, and all the church bells in Ottawa rang. And it was lots of tears too.
Very touching moment.
Yeah, yeah.
Without a doubt.
We have tears of happiness as well as tears of sadness. And then, so war was over and the boys came home. And the first one to come home was my brother Vincent. And Lansdowne Park was divided into all the letters of the alphabet, spaced. And so imagine after being overseas 3, 4, 5, 6 years, you had to parade around the park and then go to the letter that was your last name. and we were looking for my brother Vincent, and we couldn't find him. And then we saw this man with his arms around him saying, my son, I'd know you anywhere. But it wasn't his son, it was my brother Vincent. So you can imagine how you change in those years. And then he was kind of sad though, because he came home in the summer and his war bride wife didn't come till the next January. So I think the men came home first and then they brought the war brides. But, and then my brother Linus, when he was parading around Lansdowne Park, this little head popped out of his jacket, and it was a little black and white puppy. When they were getting on the ship, there was a little, they thought, homeless dog, so he brought it with him. And of course, that caused quite a bit of merriment. And, but he wouldn't talk to the press after, because then the dog would have to be in quarantine. And because the little dog was black and white, he called him Whiskey, because it was black and white whiskey. And then my father came home later, because my son Eugene told me the engineers were the ones that had to do the final cleaning up. And so I told you his story, that you know, he was only home 4 months when he died of a massive heart attack. So we were pretty young at, I think I was 6 when he went over, so really I only knew him for 4 months. So, yeah, they're my memories of war, and, but we always have to have hope, and we hoped that, well, World War I was supposed to be the war that ended all wars, right?
Yes.
And you wonder if you ever learn. Will we ever learn? Look what's going on in the world now, but we'll hope and pray that one day there'll be peace, and we get peace through prayer and getting rid of hate and past grievances and learning to forgive and live in peace and harmony. So I hope that's our future.
Indeed, Karen, very well said. And of course, one thing that we would like to touch base on, with this year being the 150th anniversary of the RCMP, and a lot of your family members and their commitment to serve and protect. And you know what? Things do get better through people such as your family.
Right.
That take the initiative to serve publicly and to be a part of the greater good.
Okay. Yes. And when I mentioned my connection with the RCMP, I met my husband in Resolute Bay. Even though I lived in Ottawa, I was working for the Education Division of the Department of Northern Affairs, met him in Resolute Bay, and then my sister, living in Ottawa, met her husband, also RCMP, on a blind date, and so we had a double wedding, a double RCMP wedding with the Lances, and yeah, it was quite an event even in Ottawa for, yeah, and so I had my husband and my brother-in-law, and then my son Richard decided, I remember when he announced that he was proud to be following in his father's footsteps. And so he now has just over 25 years service, and he will be speaking too on Remembrance Day at the service.
Very gracious of him to take part in our ceremony as well.
Oh, I think he'll be proud to do that.
Yeah.
Both representing himself and his father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's tremendous.
And his uncle.
Yeah.
Yeah. He, so that's my memories.
That's a terrific
Thanks for the memories.
number of memories.
Yeah.
Thanks for the memories, Claire.
Yeah.
Indeed, we certainly, as I said before, appreciate you taking this honor and being a part of our services, as well as your son Richard. So
thank you. And as I asked you, was I the most worthy? Because I certainly didn't want anyone else to be displaced. But anyway, I thank you for the honor. And it's good to, like I wrote an article for the paper, and my last line was, of course I remember, how could I ever forget?
And as we look above us, as it says, Claire, lest we forget. And we hope certainly that people keep bringing forward these memories and helping us to remember.
Definitely.
Claire,
Okay.
I'd like to thank you so much.
Take care.
It's been a real delight hearing some of your
Jared.
story, and we look forward to hearing more of it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
By that time, they had set up what they called the Jamestown line, and the whole deal was that you just prevented the North Koreans and the Chinese from attacking. We were not allowed to attack into North Korea. We had to just hold the line. It was very much like First World War trench warfare, because we lived in bunkers. We dug our own holes and we covered them up, keep the rain out, and that's where we lived. I think the part that I remember most disliking is the heat in the summertime. Most Korea veterans will say they remember the cold. Maybe because I was raised on a farm in Manitoba, it was cold, but I don't remember it as much as I remember the heat. You just, when the temperature got up around 100 to 110, somewhere in there, you just wanted to find a place and not move. Some place where it's cool, if there is such a thing. Bunkers were cool most of the time. And you didn't move. The Chinese didn't bother you during the heat of the day because they were probably too hot too. So I think that's the part I dislike more than anything. And then during the rainy season, everything was wet. You couldn't wear a leather watch strap because it'd turn green and rot. Anything leather would rot. The rats were big too. They were big, healthy rats. They were well fed, I guess. I think the mice were the more dangerous because I think they carried a disease. The rats were very large and very shiny. The fur was very shiny. So that's a sign of a healthy rat. We didn't have houses. We didn't have even heated tents. We just had a hole in the ground, made our own stoves, and that's and if you could scrounge some gas to cut your diesel with, then your stoves would burn fairly clean. But if you were burning straight diesel, then they would carbon up and once in a while explode and blow your stovepipes all, and everything would be covered with a greasy soot. And that was Korea.
Flying Officer David Renwick Agnew was born at Hanley, Saskatchewan, and worked for the Canadian National Railway for a few months before enlisting in the Royal Canadian Air Force in Regina in late 1941. Flying Officer Agnew was killed in action over Cologne, Germany, and is buried at Groesbeek Canadian War Cemetery in the Netherlands. Flying Officer Agnew perished on his third operational mission. Flying Officer Agnew was the son of John Howard Agnew and Gertrude Lucy Brownell Agnew. Flying Officer Agnew's parents retired to Regina after the war.
Flight Lieutenant Orville Benson. Flight Lieutenant Benson taught at country schools at Black Oak, Pangman, Mundy, and Keydive until he enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Force in January of 1941. He spent 5 years as a pilot in Coastal Command and served in the British Isles, North Atlantic, Mediterranean Sea, Indian Ocean, Africa, and the Middle East, where he was promoted to flight lieutenant. The RCAF discharged him in 1945, and in 1946 he resumed his teaching career at Black Oak. In 1947, he resumed farming and married. He continued teaching at Perry, Amulet, Ogama, Pangman, and Yellowgrass while still farming until 1968. Orville retired from teaching in 1979.
Private Gordon Lester Clay was born on a farm near Griffin. He enlisted in Regina at 12 Depot Division in October 1942 at age 20. Private Clay completed basic training at Camp Shiloh, Manitoba, qualifying as a driver mechanic. Private Clay was posted to the Lake Superior Regiment, 4th Canadian Armoured Brigade as a Bren gun carrier driver. Private Clay landed at Cannes, France on 12 July 1944 and drove his Bren gun carrier across France, Belgium, Holland, and Germany. Private Clay was in Holland for their liberation. Private Clay was discharged in March 1946. He returned home, purchased a farm, married on 11 November 1949, raised his family, and farmed until his death in 1996.
Private Lee Crane was killed in action on the 5th of January 1917 while serving with the 46th Battalion Saskatchewan Regiment during the preparation for the Battle of Vimy Ridge. He is buried at Villers Station Cemetery, northwest portion of France. Private Crane was the son of George Crane, who homesteaded northeast 301714, just south of Weyburn. Lee's attestation papers state he was born in Yellowgrass, Saskatchewan, and was working as a bank clerk when he enlisted in Weyburn late in 1915.
Private William S. Dale enlisted with the South Saskatchewan Regiment while living on the farm near Redland, Saskatchewan. Bill served overseas in France and Germany. After the war, he returned to Redland, Saskatchewan before moving to Weyburn, where he worked at Souris Valley as a psychiatric nurse for 35 years. There's Private Esdale received the Most Venerable Order of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem and the Service Medal of the Most Venerable Order of St. John of Jerusalem. Bill spent countless hours doing volunteer work with the Weyburn Legion and was instrumental in setting up the Military Museum at Mount St. Mary's.
Private Norvald Clayton enlisted in the Army in 1941, serving until 1946. He trained at Regina, Suffield, Alberta, Calgary, and multiple locations in British Columbia. His first combat duty was with the Rocky Mountain Rangers, serving alongside American troops on the island of Kiska, Alaska, where their mission was to repel Japanese troops invading the Aleutian Islands. Private Flayton was then sent to England, where he was assigned as a driver mechanic with the Queen's Own Cameron Highlanders of Canada in 6th Brigade of the 2nd Canadian Division. He landed in Cherbourg, Normandy, France. Private Flayton was involved in frontline combat along the west coast of Normandy through Belgium, Holland, and was in Odenburg, Germany when armistice was declared. When the war ended, he was posted in Holland. He returned to Weyburn upon his discharge.
Sergeant Yvonne Vigoureux Hall was born 1925 in France. Sergeant Hall's family immigrated to Canada in 1930 to a farm northwest of Gladmar, Saskatchewan. In 1943, at the age of 18, she enlisted in the Canadian Women's Army Corps and took her training in Vermilion, Alberta. Sergeant Hall was posted to Prince Albert, where she served most of her time. Promoted to sergeant, she spent the latter part of her service in Regina until her discharge in 1946 at age 21. Sergeant Hall wed Wallace Hall in 1949 and raised her family on the farm near Neptune, Saskatchewan. She now resides in Weyburn.
Lieutenant George Andreas Renus was born in Newdorf, Saskatchewan in 1918, and while living in Yellowgrass at the start of the war. He enlisted in June 1940 in Regina with the Royal Canadian Army Service Corps and remained in Canada. Lieutenant Renus' family remained in Yellowgrass, Saskatchewan. Lieutenant Renus completed basic officer training in Chilliwack, BC, and was promoted to officer cadet in September 1943. Lieutenant Renus was released in October 1945. Lieutenant Renus returned to Yellowgrass in 1945, where he joined his brother at the Yellowgrass store. He then bought the store at Worcester, Saskatchewan, and they raised award-winning chickens and farmed the area. Lieutenant George Renas passed away in Regina in 2007.
Private Michael William Rogel enlisted in the South Saskatchewan Regiment on the 10th of January 1940 and completed basic training at Shiloh, Manitoba. Private Rogel sailed from Halifax to Liverpool in June 1940, where he was attached to G-Wing Canadian Base Depot, Aldershot, Hampshire, to undertake training as an anti-tank gunner. Private Rogel married while stationed in Hampshire and had a daughter. On 18 August 1942, Private Rogel embarked for the beaches of Dieppe, landing at Pourville. Private Rogel returned to England on the 19th of August after the Dieppe raid was over. Private Michael Rogel took part in the liberation of Holland. In July 1944, Private Rogel was wounded twice by enemy fire. Private Rogel was discharged on the 5th of July 1945 and sailed to Canada with his family following soon after. 2 more children were born in Canada. Private Rogel returned to his job as a section man for Canadian Pacific Rail and later worked at the Weyburn Union Hospital. Private Rogel passed away in 1977 at age 58.
Private Howard Schmidt enlisted in the Canadian Infantry Corps on the 21st of June 1943 and was posted to the South Saskatchewan Regiment at the age of 20. Private Schmidt served in England, France, Belgium, Holland, and Germany. Private Schmidt was wounded twice in action, but returned to active duty after recovering both times. Private Schmidt returned to Halifax in 1945 and returned to Weyburn with the South Saskatchewan Regiment. Private Schmidt was discharged from the South Saskatchewan Regiment in Weyburn on the 5th of January 1946. Upon returning to Weyburn, Private Schmidt married and started farming in the Ralph Hallbright area, where they raised a family of 7. Private Howard Schmidt passed away at the age of 100 on the 28th of April 2023 in Weyburn.
Private Douglas Joseph Ralph Snyder was working in Estevan at Grenadine Motors when he enlisted in the South Saskatchewan Regiment on 15 September 1939 at the age of 17. Private Snyder qualified as a driver mechanic and motorcycle dispatch rider. Private Snyder sailed from Halifax with the South Saskatchewan Regiment on 25 December 1940. On 6 July 1944, his unit was sent to France and he was wounded in action at Juno Beach. Fragments remained in his leg until his passing at age 71. Private Snyder was promoted to Lance Corporal. Private Snyder met his wife overseas and they returned to Canada in 1945. Lance Corporal Snyder was employed at Barber Motors as an auto body technician after the war.
Airman James Wallace was born and raised in the Milestone and Lang area. He was the youngest of 8 brothers to enlist in the forces. Airman Wallace enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Force in 1942 and was stationed at Bournemouth on the English Channel, serving as a transport driver. The convoy came under German aircraft fire on many occasions. Airman James Wallace returned to Milestone and was discharged in 1946, married and raised his family. 2 of Airman Wallace's brothers were killed in action, and his mother received the Silver Cross several years after the war ended. Airman Wallace is dearly remembered by his son Jerry and his daughter Joanne Wallace-Maury.
Lieutenant Ross Ziegler was raised in Souris, Manitoba, enlisting in the Canadian Army in 1939 at age 25. After completing basic training, he was sent overseas where he spent most of the war, earning the rank of lieutenant. After the war, Lieutenant Ziegler went to Winnipeg, Manitoba, where he started painting for local contractors. He moved to Moose Jaw, working for the Saskatchewan Technical Institute, and was transferred to Weyburn with his wife and daughter in 1969, working for the Souris Valley Hospital as a painter.
Welcome to Remembrance Day service. Please, we request to remove your hat and turn your cell phone off during the service. The congregation is asked to stand as the colors are marched on and to remain standing until the prayer of invocation is concluded. Thank you. Sergeant at Arms, march on the colors.
Color party, attention! Left, turn. On the left, quick, march. Sir. Deposit, color.
We will sing "O Canada."
Eagle, clear!
The last post.
Thank you.
they shall not grow old. As we that are left grow old, age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Here at the left.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome everybody to our Remembrance Day service for 2024. Honoured platform guests, our War Mother, representing all War Mothers, Mrs. Betty Nibbs, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Thank you very much for coming. It's quite a nice turnout today, and it's always nice to see. I've got a little poem here just to start off this Remembrance Day. I thought it was quite nice. He left his home to fight with men. Just a boy, won't come home again. In the mud,
in Flanders field. He fell too soon, but did not yield. A boy so proud to die a man, on foreign soil was not the plan. But fight he did until his death. The poppy remembers his last breath. I would now like to hand over to Reverend Wamasika.
Today we gather to remember and honor those who served and sacrificed. May our remembrance stir hearts of gratitude, compassion, and peace. Let us worship seeking guidance and strength. Let us pray. Almighty God, as we gather on this Remembrance Day, we seek your presence and guidance. We remember the brave men and women who served and sacrificed for our freedom. Bless us with gratitude, compassion, and peace. May our worship service honor their legacy and your divine love. Amen. We sing, O God, our help in ages past.
Honored dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, once again we welcome you to the 2024 Remembrance Day services held for Branch 47 here in Weyburn. The first person I would like to introduce today is our Memorial War Mother representative. Although Betty was never a mother of somebody from the war, Betty and her siblings and her parents fled from war-torn Europe and made the long, arduous journey by ship to the shores of Canada, and then a longer train ride, it seemed, to Saskatchewan, to their newfound home. Betty just actually celebrated her 90th birthday, so that's many years back, And Betty tells us she only holds the highest admiration for the country of Canada and the freedoms and liberties which we all have come to know. So, ladies and gentlemen, placing our first wreath on behalf of Memorial War Mothers, welcome Elsbeth, we all know her as Betty, Nibs. We will now call upon the federal government representative, Yvonne Jones, on behalf of Dr. Robert Kitchen, our Member of Parliament for Souris Moose Mountain. The next wreath to be placed will be placed on behalf of the provincial government by our newly elected MLA, Michael Uyghur. The next wreath to be placed will be placed on behalf of the City of Weyburn. This wreath will be placed by retiring alderman who served for many years, Mel Van Betju. The next wreath, escorting himself, will be laid by our President of Branch 47, Comrade Brian Glass. The next wreath to be placed will be placed on behalf of the Merchant Marine Services and will be laid by Shirley Sparks. During the war, the Merchant Marine Service was a vital link in the chain of supplies for foreign troops overseas. Many were not even Canadian, and most did not wear a military uniform. But many men and women served, and many of them lost their lives due to the enemy submarine activity. That wreath has now been laid to honor their bravery and sacrifice during the war. The next wreath to be placed will be placed on behalf of the Weyburn Police Service by Chief Brent Van de Sype. Placing a wreath on behalf of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Constable Travis Nackstadt. Placing the next wreath on behalf of the Weyburn Fire Department, we're calling upon Constable Vincent Lipey of the Weyburn Police Force. The next wreath placed will be placed on behalf of number 2302 Weyburn Army Cadets. That will be laid by Cadet Zeke Hyder. Placing a wreath on behalf of the South Saskatchewan Regiment, Brian Glass. As we can see, there are a number of wreaths that have been laid here in the hall for many people that choose to remember and pay remembrance through the donations with the purchase of the wreaths. Each June, thanks to many, many volunteers, we hold Decoration Day, where we actually visit the cemeteries throughout the city, Hillcrest and Green Acres Memorial Cemetery. In June, when we go to place respects to those veterans, we place in excess of 700 flags in those two cemeteries. That's just a small number of the people that served from Weyburn and District that this is their final resting place. So the numbers are quite staggering, and as I say, that's only a small number of the people that served from the area and across the country. A wreath has been placed on behalf of the Third Degree Knights Council, 1731. The Fourth Degree Knights Assembly, 1526. Aaron's Well Servicing, All Saints Anglican Church, Weyburn. Apex Distribution, Auto Electric Service Limited. Barber Motors, Blue Earth. Bonnie Evans, in honor of Roy McKelkey. Brad Irwin, in memory of Eugene Irwin. Brian Bristol, Canadian Mental Health, Canadian Tire, Caprice Resources, CIBC Bank, the City of Weyburn, the Club Cafe, Cowntown, Dairy Queen, Dawn Ottman for Women's Veterans, E. Barassa and Sons, Edge Safety and Supply, Edward Jones, Encore Electric Corporation, Fieldview Sun Life Financial, Fletcher's Funeral Home, FYI Doctors, Grace United Church Women, Grand Image Design, Great Plains Ford, Harvard Western Insurance from Yellowgrass, Hillview Sales and Service, The Home Hardware, IAFF Local 2989, Jerry and Janie Jordan's family, in memory of Jerry Jordan's RCAF World War II, Margaret Jordan's British Women's Air Force World War II, Roland Duchesne, Royal Canadian Army World War II. A wreath has also been placed on behalf of Jerry Manil Limited, Kelly Vandersype, Kathy McFadden, in loving memory of H.K. Pete McFadden from all his family. Kevin Backen, Knox Presbyterian Church, Mazank Fuels Limited, Mildred Fleming, Miller Well Servicing, Minard's Leisure World, MNP LLP, Merglot Steels and Metals, Murray McGilvery, Nexans, NSWB Law Firm, Nutri and Ag, Old Fashioned Foods, Parrish and Heimbecker Limited, Pet Value, PharmaSave 416 and Starbucks Weyburn. On behalf of the Ponto family, Prairie Diagnostic Seed Lab Incorporated, Prairie Lightning Electric, Prairie Sky Co-op Food Store, Home Center, Sud City Car Wash, Crossroads Gas Bar, Prairie Wind Recreational, Quality Plumbing and Heating, RWDSU, Railway Chiropractic, RD Funeral Home, Remax Weyburn Realty, Richardson Pioneer, Rick McKenzie. And on behalf of Rick and his family, that wreath has been placed in memory of Captain Julianne McKenzie. Julianne was born and raised in Weyburn. She was well known in the community both for her involvement with the Highland dancing and as a bagpiper with the Legion Pipe Band. She graduated from the Weyburn Comprehensive School back in 1990. Thereafter, she entered the military, attaining the rank of captain. She went on to become a helicopter pilot. Captain McKenzie served 2 6-month tours of duty in the Persian Gulf
as part of a multinational task force. In 2002, she was stationed at 444 Squadron, Goose Bay, Labrador, and assigned to the Search and Rescue Unit. On July 18, 2002, while responding to a distress call, her helicopter crashed as a result of a mechanical failure. Both she and the other pilot died in this accident. Julianne was just a young 30 years old. In 2009, Captain Mackenzie was awarded the Silver Cross Medal, which was presented to her family. That wreath has been placed today on behalf of Julianne's family. Additional wreaths have been placed on behalf of the RM of Broken Shell, number 68, on behalf of the RM of Griffin, number 66, on behalf of the RM of Weyburn, number 67. Wreath has been placed by Roger Clay, Rona, Sask Energy, and Sask Power. The Schmidt family, in loving memory of Howard Schmidt from his family. Howard was a long-time member of our branch here and did live to be 100 years of age, even though he went through several things, very trying things in the war years, but you never saw Howard without a smile. The Scotia Bank, Southeast Computer Solutions, Shook Law Firm, Sears Valley Dental, Sears Valley Industries, Southern Glass, Southern Industrial and Truck, St. Vincent de Paul Catholic Women, Teresa LaFloy, in loving memory of John and Lil Hearn from the Hearn family, Triffon's Pizza, TS&M Supply, the Welsh Kitchen, Western Prime Meats, and Western Lumber, the Weyburn and District Labor Council, Weyburn Caravan Society, the Weyburn Credit Union, Weyburn Dodge, Weyburn Humane Society, Weyburn Kinsman Club, Weyburn Oil Women's Association, the Weyburn Red Wings Hockey Club, Weyburn Wildlife Federation, Weyburn's Ukrainian community. We will remember them. Glory to the Ukrainian heroes. Wheatland Senior Center, Young Fellows Wives of Weyburn, Young Fellows Club of Weyburn, Young's Farm Equipment, Zion Lutheran Church. Those wreaths have all been graciously sponsored and represented by those individuals and organizations. We have received a letter I would like to share with you from the Prime Minister's office, dated November 11th, 2024. Dear friends, I would like to extend my warmest greetings to my fellow Canadians marking Remembrance Day. Every year on November 11th, we don our poppies and gather in solidarity to recognize every Canadian who has served and continues to serve our country in times of both war and peace. We observe 2 minutes of silence to acknowledge a debt that we can never repay. This year, the Prime Minister had the privilege of commemorating the 80th anniversary of D-Day and the Battle of Normandy at Juno Beach. It was truly an honor to meet with veterans who were among the over 14,000 Canadians who demonstrated tremendous bravery on June the 6th, 1944, and achieved a critical victory that changed the course of history. It is our duty to remember their stories and to never forget the sacrifices they made to ensure our collective freedoms. Let us pay tribute to the brave heroes who have stepped forward to fight for justice and humanity with compassion, valor, and nobility. In doing so, we honor their service, preserve their legacy, and acknowledge our commitment to building a more peaceful world for all. Signed, the Right Honourable Justin R.J. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada. Next to bring greetings from the Government of Canada, Yvonne Jones, on behalf of Dr. Robert Kitchen.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome to this year's War Mother, Betty Nibbs. I would like to acknowledge that the city of Weyburn is on Treaty 4 land, the traditional home of the Cree, Ojibwe, Saulteaux, Dakota, Nakota, Lakota, and the homeland of the Métis. Today is a day of remembrance, to remember those brave men and women who have served for freedom and democracy and did so no matter the cost. More than 120,000 names are inscribed in the 8 books of remembrance kept on Parliament Hill. Those are the names of those who gave their lives in defense of our country. But many more were wounded and suffered long after the fighting stopped. Wounds that were both seen and unseen. The Royal Canadian Legion was founded after World War I to provide support to those veterans of armed forces returning from conflict. Our current National Defence Force is approximately 63,500 personnel, with another 22,500 reserves. We have more than 2,000 personnel serving as peacekeepers currently around the world. All are willing to serve, as others have, and fight for our freedom so that it can continue. Today, we spend our day in quiet reflection to remember and honor those who have fallen in defense of freedom, but make time to remember those who come home with wounds, seen and unseen, to remember those who serve today, who may be called upon to defend freedom at any time and will do so willingly. The fight for freedom and democracy continues around the world daily, and we here in Canada are not immune to that fight. So today, we continue to bow our heads and think of them, lest we forget.
Next to bring greetings on behalf of the province of Saskatchewan, our newly elected MLA, Michael Weyburn.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here to bring greetings on behalf of Premier Scott Moe and the Government of Saskatchewan. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to honor Remembrance Day. Today we reflect on the pride we share here in Saskatchewan. There is so much to be proud of. In this moment, we see unity, not just within our community, but across our province. Every year, many of us come together to honor our veterans and to remember those who bravely dedicated their lives in service of peace and freedom. As we gather, let us remember the importance of preserving our history and showing respect to those who made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. May their sacrifices inspire each of us to create a better place that reflects the ideals they so selflessly fought for. To all the volunteers and organizers whose efforts made this ceremony possible, thank you. Know that this event allowed us to come together in remembrance and gratitude. I am truly honored to be a part of this ceremony as we pay tribute to our fallen heroes. Thank you all for being here.
Next, we will welcome Councillor Mel Van Betju to bring greetings. One of his last official duties as a councillor, I guess, but Mel will bring greetings on behalf of the City of Weyburn.
Thank you, Jerry. Good morning, and welcome to our War Mother, Betty Nibbs, our honored guests, all veterans and their families, and everyone who took time to attend this important ceremony. It is a privilege and an honor to offer greetings on behalf of the City of Weyburn and this year's Remembrance Day ceremonies. Today we gather in reflection to honor those who made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. We come together not only to remember the brave men and women who served and gave their lives in defense of freedom, but also to recognize those who continue to serve, standing for the values and liberties we cherish. On behalf of the City of Weyburn, we express our thanks to our veterans, current service members, and their families. Let us honor their memory, not only on this Remembrance Day, but every day. Thank you.
Now I would like to call on Legion Chaplain, Reverend Valentine Amobi, to bring a scripture reading.
Please may we stand. The Lord be with you. Reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Seeing the crowd, Jesus went up on the mountain, and when he sat down, his disciples came to him, and he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you, and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. The Gospel of the Lord.
Our next song will be Christ Be Our Light.
Your holy people,
Our next guests, our speakers for today, Dennis and Lorraine Tremblay.
Good morning, everyone. Dignitaries, veterans, our War Mother Betty Nibs, ladies and gentlemen, and all you young people. When I was approached and asked to speak at this year's commemorative ceremony, my initial thought was, why me? However, upon further reflection, I thought, why not me? I am very thankful for the opportunity. Many of us who have been fortunate not to have lost loved ones may not fully comprehend the tremendous heartache and sense of loss that they that have continue to experience. All of us should be proud and honored to recognize and acknowledge those who served and sacrificed, the fallen, the injured, their families, friends, communities. If not for them, we would not have the privilege of enjoying the rights and freedoms that, at times, are taken for granted. We must never forget. We must forever remember and always extend our gratitude for all the sacrifices made so that we may have the freedom and way of life we so enjoy. My late brother returned from a trip to France where he visited Normandy and the war memorials. I recall him sharing how truly moving and emotional the experience had been. In his words, we must always be filled with gratitude. Some years later, Lorraine and I traveled to Normandy. As we visited the memorials and quietly and pensively walked through the cemeteries, lined with row upon row of white marble headstones and crosses, many depicting the very young, we too were filled with the same emotions. At this time, I would like to acknowledge the tremendous role that the Royal Canadian Legion branches across our country have played in remembering and honoring our veterans, their families, for the sacrifices they made for freedom. On a recent trip to the Northwest Territories, we stopped in Inuvik and visited Canada's most northerly Legion branch, McGuinness Branch 220. Our President Brian has a memento they gifted to us at that visit. As has been our experience, we were greeted with friendship and camaraderie. Legions are and have always been and will continue to be places permeated with a sense of gratitude for the freedom we are so fortunate to have. Armistice Day, November 11th, 1918, marked the end of hostilities, the end of World War I. The 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, a prelude to peace negotiations. We should all take time to reflect. These are some words and thoughts that may cross our hearts and minds. Service, courage, sacrifice, human cost of war, veterans, loved ones, heartache, cherished memories, forever remembered, commemoration, gratitude, freedom, way of life, honor, liberty, respect, solemn promise, next generations. A recent poll suggests that many Canadians know little about our country's history or the moments that define its past and should inform its future. How unfortunate and disconcerting. Existing conflicts around the world continue to add to the loss of lives. Peace and compromise appear to be elusive. War and conflict are truly a human tragedy. Life is a precious gift and should be treasured and protected. If humanity could embrace and foster an attitude of gratitude, then peace would surely be less elusive and much more likely to be sustainable and enduring. I believe it is our collective responsibility and duty to acknowledge and honor all who serve. Also, it should also be our individual responsibility and duty to be of service to one another, to be other-centered. Lest we forget, lest we forget. The words, lest we forget, symbolize a solemn promise to the fallen, to our veterans, and to all those who serve, that we will pass the torch of remembrance, respect, and gratitude to the next generations. We owe it to them. In closing, I would like to call on my wife Lorraine to share a poem that we came across when visiting the Juno Beach Center in Normandy. Lorraine?
This poem, entitled "Why Do You Cry," was written by Ray Jackson of Perth, Western Australia, in memory of his father. I stood in a field in a faraway land, drawn to the spot but could not understand. What made me stop right next to the grave, and what was the strange, sad feeling it gave? Though there all alone, I really felt the presence of someone, and so I just knelt. It seemed I needed to sit in the cold and wait for something to me to be told. "Why do you cry?" the young soldier said. "And why are you here in the field of the dead?" His voice was so soft I hardly could hear, and when I first looked, there was nobody near. He looked like a shadow in his old uniform, and it seemed to me he could never be warm. I knew in my mind he could not be real, but it seemed his presence would help me to feel what all people feel when they come to see the place where their loved ones lie over the sea. He asked me again, and when I replied, I said it was all for all of mankind that I cried. I cry for the children that were never to be when all of the soldiers went over the sea. I cry for those fathers who all had to stay as their sons went to war in a land far away. I cry for the mothers, every last one, who watched as the war took their dearly loved son. I cry for the girl who lost her sweetheart as she waved him goodbye when they had to part. I cry for the friends who at home had to be as their mates went to war far over the sea. I cry for the man who lies in this ground, not knowing if ever his body was found. I cry for the freedom this hero gave me, and I cry that his knowing this never will be. I heard a soft sigh, and his voice gently said, "This is my grave, and though I am dead, you have found me. And so I know I can rest, happy to know that we all gave our best." I then saw his eyes fill with tears, so I said, "For whom do you weep, young soldier now dead?" And as he faded away, like I knew he would do, his voice said, "My son, my tears are for you." Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis and Lorraine, for sharing that with us. I would now like to call on Reverend John Smith for a ministerial prayer.
As we bow in prayer, I invite you to stand, please. Our great and gracious God, we're thankful to you for the honor and privilege of being gathered in your presence today in a country where we enjoy freedom and peace, that at such a great cost was won for us by those who've gone before us and those who continue to serve, those wearing uniform, carrying a badge, carrying medical supplies, bringing hope, providing service, making sacrifices. We thank you for the gifts that people have offered, gifts of service, of courage, and of sacrifice. We thank you for those who are fallen, those who mourn family and friends, and those who continue to serve. And we pray, dear Lord, that as people of this land, that you would stir within us a commitment to live in such a way that this land continues to be a place of peace and freedom, of equality, of opportunity for all of every age, of every color, of every language, of every gender. And help us to honor you and honor those who went before us by seeking unity and love in the way we treat each other and the way we interact with all people around the world. Be with our leaders, be with those who serve in our military, who serve as police and fire prevention officers, who drive ambulances, who serve in so many ways. Bless them in their work and bless us as citizens of this land. And now we lift up to you, as we join our voices, the prayer that our Lord Jesus taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
We will now continue with the offering to the Veterans Poppy Fund. We welcome the 5th Weyburn Scouting Group. While Variations are performing their next couple of selections, the Scouting Group will be going throughout the crowd. Please donate if you can, and rest assured, all money that goes to the Poppy Fund stays to assist veterans throughout our community and surrounding area.
Good morning. The White Cliffs of Dover was a famous World War II song that symbolized hope and peace. Today, we still sing songs of hope. Hope for peace, hope for a better world, hope for each other. The power of hope will fuel dreams for tomorrow and will make those dreams come true.
Is
Thank you to Variations as well. Thank you to the 5th Weyburn Scouting Group for their collection of our Poppy Trust Fund money and as presented to Pastor Victoria Wamasika. A few other people I would like to thank today, certainly Variations, our pianist Gail Murray, trumpeter Bailey Roy, fantastic job. But I would also like to thank Access Communications for their help in broadcasting and distributing this around the community of Weyburn so those that are not able to attend can still enjoy the service as they have for years. Thank you for that. At this point in time, I will call on our chaplain, Victoria Wamasika. Thank you.
Sergeant at Arms, prepare to march off the colors.
Color party, attention. Left, turn. Right and left. Quick, march. Cover off with your flags. Retrieve flag. Above, turn.
Please rise as we sing, God Save the King. Sergeant at Arms, march off the colors.
Color party, right, turn. By the left, quick, march.
Again, I'd just like to say thank you very much for everybody coming out today for Remembrance Day Parade. This is Betty Nibbs. I'd like to say it's a pleasure to have you here and to be talking to you for the last couple of weeks. Honoured guests and everybody. I have another little poem to read. It's somewhat to my heart. Unless you've been a soldier, you just won't understand the things that we have seen and done in the service of our land. We were trained to live in combat and to deal with dreadful sights that shouldn't be seen by anyone and keep you awake at night. We don't discuss the wounds we have to the body or the mind. We just put our hurts behind us and turn our memories blind. We're proud we served our country, but remember those we lost. For the freedom that you have today, they paid the awful cost. Lest we forget. I will now call on Chaplain Reverend Victoria Wamasika for the commissioning and benediction.
Go forth, remembering the sacrifices of those who came before us. May their legacy inspire us to build a world where freedom, justice, and compassion reign. May God's blessing be upon you, now and forever. Amen.
We would like to invite everybody downstairs for the War Mothers Luncheon to follow in the Legion Lounge. As Jerry has already said, the Weyburn Legion Branch 47 wishes to thank everyone for participating in this service. And for myself, another special thanks to the Weyburn 5th Scouting Group, Access Communications, Bailey Roy, and Gail Murray. Thank you very much. Please be seated until our honoured guest from the stage has gone downstairs. Thank you very much.
If you'd like to share your feedback on the program you just watched, contact us today